A very good evening to all the participants and the distinguished leader who is present this evening. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Suchitra Rajagopalan. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to this conversation.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me here.
It's a very special occasion because the guest this evening is joining from Australia. In spite of an odd time zone that she is residing in, she has agreed to speak with us. So we should be extra careful in conserving the time. I will do it myself, and I request all of you to keep your questions short, and you can definitely interact with the leader directly also, but all that we'll have to conserve and complete within the 1 hour that we have borrowed from Ms. Suchitra Rajagopalan. I will now start. I'll make a brief introduction of the guest, and then I'll hand it over back to her for her opening remarks. So this is the 85th leadership conversation we are having in this series. We typically have this every Friday evenings, and leaders from all walks of life join the conversations and present the accomplishments, their journeys, and some insights, and we draw lessons from the conversation. So this is the 85th in the series. We are talking about the evolving role of the CFO in the automobile industry. This conversation will be held by Ms. Suchitra Rajagopalan, and the first half an hour is introduction as well as the talk, and the second half an hour is Q&A. A brief introduction. Ms. Suchitra is the finance director with global exposure in the area of business control, financial and risk management, change management, corporate governance, shared service operations, and business advisory services. She served as Director of Financial Control and Accounting, Volvo Group Australia. She currently serves so. As a member of executive leadership team, she is responsible for financial reporting, accounting, credit management, accounts payable, and tax and treasury functions. She also worked as Chief Financial Officer, Volvo Group Southern Africa, UK Director Group Tax AB Volvo, Director Corporate Governance AB Volvo UK and Turkey Chief Financial Officer, Volvo Group Automotive Tikaret Limited, Corporate Audit Manager AB Volvo UK, Consultant Corporate Finance Practice Audit Senior Assurance Practice KPMG India, several roles that she had done in the past. Ms. Suchitra has completed her Chartered Accountancy Inter, the ICAI 93-97. She completed her MBA with distinction for dissertation from the prestigious Warwick Business School, University of Warwick, UK. Volvo Project Management Program, IHM Business School, Gothenburg, 2004 and 5. And also Volvo Business Program, Stockholm School of Economics, Sweden, 2005 and 6. Her hobbies include community service, astrology, dress designing, and cooking. This is a wonderful profile, and we are extremely thankful to you, ma'am, for agreeing to speak in the leadership conversation. And I welcome you to this 85th leadership conversation. I'll take just one moment to introduce Professor Prasad. He is the Director for Academic Wing at ICFAI Group. He has a rich experience of 3 decades as an entrepreneur, as a professional leader, and as an academic. He holds MBA from IIM Kolkata, and before that BTech from IIT Bombay. He published several articles, edited books, and presented papers in forums within India and outside. Welcome, Professor Prasad, to you as well.
Thank you, Professor.
With this, I will stop sharing my screen, and now the floor is open to you, ma'am. I request you to start sharing your screen, and we are all ears. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your introduction, and thank you again for having me here. I'll just try to share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it. So I just, in that first half an hour, I think that you mentioned, I think what I'd like to cover is my journey at Volvo so far, some of the key learnings that I've had, when it comes to leadership and management. And then, of course, the focus area for within the finance function, within finance and business control. And then, of course, the topic of the day, the evolving role of the CFO in this industry. So I just wanted to split it out this way. So if I go quickly into, I think you've talked about a lot of my introduction, but just to give you a small background there, I moved to the UK to do my MBA at Warwick Business School in the year 2000. Did my MBA project on residual value risk management for Volvo trucks in the UK, and I've been with them ever since. So it's been quite a long journey with Volvo in different geographies, different roles. But it's been about 21 years, which is not that common, I think, these days where you see people moving around. But I think my rationale there, as you can see from the, the different roles that I've done, my rationale has been so far that it's yes, it's the same umbrella of the Volvo Group, but the roles were quite different. The geographies were different, and there was different points of learning. So it's not static at all. And most of the countries that I've been to, I've been there typically for about a stint of 4 years, which gives you enough time to make changes before you move on to the next assignment. So some of the assignments that I've done, I think you've mentioned it already, CFO in Turkey and in South Africa. And then I've done a lot of corporate jobs where we worked at the headquarters. I didn't move to Sweden, but I lived in the UK and traveled up and down. So it was commuting. And now, since the last year, I've been in Australia. So I think the biggest learning for me from all these different geographies and different roles has been very much, I come from India originally, and so the DNA is very much of an emerging market. Uh, of course, that then having worked with South Africa and Turkey, it gives you a good perspective of an emerging market, but then as well as having done a lot of assignments in Europe per se and in Australia now. So I think what I like there is the fact that you can move between the two. So each market and each geography is quite different, and as you're all aware, emerging markets throws different challenges to the mature markets, and I've quite enjoyed that. The other dimension that I've really enjoyed with Volvo is, to have both the market perspective, so where you work with real world issues and customers and dealers and things like that, as well as head office perspective, where I've worked for a lot of my career with AB Volvo, which is our parent company. And I think what worked well for me there is that that what the other perspective is looking for. So when you're in a head office, you're not sitting in an ivory tower. You actually know what's a market reality because you've actually worked in a market. And equally the other way, when you're sitting in a market and head office makes its demands, you then know exactly what why they're asking the questions they're asking. So I think it gives you quite a well-rounded perspective when you've worked on both sides of the spectrum. That's been my Volvo journey. And for 3 years before I moved to South Africa, I worked with Reddington, which is a IT company in India, where I had the opportunity to work as a non-executive independent director, which has been really good because it's a completely different industry from automotive, and it helped me learn a lot, from another perspective. Just moving on, some of the learnings from a leadership perspective that I've picked up over the years. Um, what definitely one of them is having moved different geographies and different, between market and headquarter roles. I think what I've learned very much is how one has to adapt the leadership and management style to suit the different cultures, different job roles. So when I was in corporate audit, you have a different focus, and when you're on the other side of the spectrum, when you're in the business, of course, you've got to adapt to the new role as well as then the market maturity as well. Uh, the next one that I keep talking about is the fact that you need to, what I've learned over the years is about lifelong learning, that you don't stop that journey of learning and you're curious as you go along. Even if you've done or been in the automotive business, there's always something new. There's always changes that happen because of, legislation, product models or anything else. And I think what I've enjoyed there is to keep the tap of learning open and keep an open mind so that you pick up new things. You're curious to learn different ways of doing things, and also sort of stretch yourself outside of what traditionally is the comfort zone. The other journey is, I guess, most of you are aware, any business change is sort of prevalent all over. And I think driving change has been a pleasure in all the roles that I've taken, because you sort of inherit, most often I've inherited departments and functions which are not working the way they should. And of course, you're not very popular when you come in and change things, but that's definitely something that I've learned along the way, and that we have to move and adapt with the times. And I think that agility with which you can grasp and change things because the circumstances have changed, I think that's been an important learning for me, as well as the continuous improvement culture. And I think they, with different cultures, have had some challenges, but I think what's been important is to continue and persevere with that continuous improvement culture. So I think, I mean, I do the same here now in Australia, where you come in, take on a business, and think people have done this for several years, and they say, why sort of fix something that's not broken? And I'm constantly saying, if I can do something today and I'm at 100, I want to be at 120 tomorrow, and to push the team and myself as well to leap into the next frontier, instead of saying, you've achieved what you came in to achieve. But it's always that extra edge where you can get to the next frontier sort of thing. The next one is, of course, the basic of understanding the levers of the business, because unless you have that, nothing really works. And I think my first opportunity in Volvo, I was completely clueless about automotive, but I had to sit outside businesses and look at how can we do things differently and better. And most often, because it's a culture where lots of people have been working for 30, 40 years, most of them look at you saying, how you're new to the business, how can you tell us, how to do things differently and better? And I think what I sort of gained through this is very much, uh, go back to the basics and, keep asking the question, why? And, you pick up the nuances, you pick up how the entire value chain works, and then just going back to basics and understanding what levers need to be pulled in various parts of the business. I think that really helps you and clear your mind on, what can you do to make change happen, sort of thing. Coming from the finance field, I think a lot of uh, people from outside of the finance field view us very much as, know what's the question, because you come from the finance sort of field. And my take very much has been, if you don't take risk, there's no reward. So you do have to take risk in business, and so long as we, are able to manage it and make informed decisions, that's definitely been a mantra for me, that you can't say no to risk all the time. It's just how well you manage the risk and how informed you are about it. The next one around customer focus, I think I talk about both internal customers, because we are business partners, and there is a balance of support and control with internal customers, because at one level you have to support them in the finance expertise area, and on the other side, you're also a gatekeeper of sorts because you're complying with policies and stuff. So it's a balancing act, and I keep saying it'll never be 50-50 when it comes to, balance of support and control. There'll always be situational circumstances where you've got to play a different part of the spectrum. And then, of course, the external customer. And that's very much, I view private dealers as well as, the actual end customers. And the fact that how easy it is to do business sort of thing. So we're constantly reminding teams, my own team, to look at, how easy it is for dealers and end customers when we come into situations where they don't understand why we're doing certain things, and how easy it is to deal with us sort of thing. And there's definitely areas where we pick up, where we need to improve there. The next one is around cross-functional collaboration. Volvo, like any of the large corporates, is very much a matrix organization. So for the same business, from an end-to-end perspective, you have various organizations coming into play with their own hierarchies and their own organizational belonging. And my take has always been working cross-functionally, definitely, despite all these boundaries of organizational belonging, where we actually address the problem and not pass the buck around between departments. So if there's an issue, I sort of very much talk to my team saying, look at the problem per se and work together, and not throw the issue and blame each other. Instead, I don't really care which part of the fence the actual issue belongs to, but just get stuck in it with the co-workers to make sure that you understand end to end that you have a role to play. And we see a lot of this in most parts of our business when we're trying to resolve some pain points which have handovers between different organizations, where we sort of come together with a different perspective from each department and then look at root causes, uh, you know of why these things have happened and how we can avoid that in the future. So there's very much learning, and we underestimate the power of this hyper collaboration. But we often find that when you come together and work as colleagues, it's not always easy because everyone's coming from a different perspective, and the ability to be able to galvanize people together to solve common problems. Uh, the next one is very much about, I know a lot of people talk about, strategy because it sounds much sort of more sexy, if you like. But I think what I always say is that with, strategy is great, but without execution, there wouldn't be, any end to the strategy. So I think this follow through and getting things done for me is quite important. So, and that's why I say execution is as important as strategy, because, there's no point strategizing if you're not able to bring it to bear. And I think the last one there is very much into networking. And I guess in any large organization, especially if you're far away from Sweden in the headquarters, it really helps to know people around in the organization so that you can pick up the phone and not have to reinvent the wheel. So often networking definitely has its advantages in getting things done. And I'm saying this all the time that if you're not a networker, you'll remain a worker. So I think those are some of the learnings I've had along my journey. Not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I think this is mainly to show the circularity in our business, where if we need to grow profitably, and then contribute to uplifting employees, customers, giving returns to shareholders, and then of course also to the society at large, how we can work together. And in all these points here, uh, what we see there is, that there's definitely a finance leaning when it comes to returns on investment, profitability, and stuff. So it's the levers of the business, but there is where I see the role of finance coming into play. And of course, this is against the backdrop of any company's, aspirations, values, and vision, mission, sort of thing. Just focusing on the areas of finance, I think I talked about it before, the, being proactive and being a business partner for the business itself. Some of these topics here, of course, are not new to, I guess, all of you. Starting off with the profitable growth and looking at whole life contribution, because often what happens is we look at, we're very focused on the margins that we make on trucks. But what we forget is that, the actual sale of the truck is just, probably a very small portion of the whole value chain, and where we make the most money is on the aftermarket and the services that come later. And to be able to focus on the whole life contribution, as well as looking into profitability by customer, the loyalty that they have with us versus the penetration when it comes to not just trucks but also services, where we make more margins. The next one, traditionally, price management was very much a part of the sales function, whereas we're very much moving more into price management being within the finance function itself. And I think I use the analogy often that it's when you're parking a vehicle and the security guard comes and tells you once you've parked that this is the wrong place to have parked your vehicle. I use the same analogy when it comes to finance, that the traditional finance role was looking around reporting. And once you report, somebody comes to you and say, why is the profit this way, or why have you reported it that way? Whereas I think with price management, this is a real chance to be proactive when it comes to business partnering for a finance team, where we actually look at profitability much before it reaches the financial reporting, and you're involved very much to guide the business. So I see that as quite a positive shift, that price management is moved from the sales, being a sales function, to moving into the finance territory, which has been great. The next one, of course, is the traditional working capital management, and this is more so important now that we see, both on the credit management side as well as inventory. You see, very much traditionally, the companies were run more by their P&L and profit and loss account, and now you see much more companies being run via their balance sheet, not so much the traditional P&L. So I think it's quite important that focus comes back. And of course, cost control has always been part of the finance territory, but where I think we very much leapfrog now is this business cycle management, where we are very much on the finance side looking into, downturn management and things like that well before we hit the, sort of trough. When it comes to risk management, internal control, and compliance, again, that's not new, but I guess with a lot of the changes in legislation, we partner quite well together with the legal and HR functions. So that's been a lot of handover points, especially when it comes to governance, has been quite important. And I guess it's only going to grow with the importance of legislation coming to play. The next one has been quite also a shift. Traditionally you had a separate department for strategy and business intelligence, and I think what's good in some CFO roles now, we see the strategy and business intelligence office actually reporting in to the CFO, and that's been pretty good. I draw the parallel with price management, where we have much more emphasis on looking at segmentation, when it comes to different types of segmentation with the market itself. So, for instance, demanding long haul is one of our main segments, and we compete differently with our competitors. And where you want to be in that, there's definite links with the the profitability and whole life contribution, of course. But I think it's nice to see that that whole department is very much part of the finance function now, which was not there traditionally. And of course, captive customer financing itself. Just moving on, I think we talked about the business partner approach, but I think where I see the shift happening is very much that the finance or the CFO function being much more like an integrator. So connecting the dots. And that's why I say even though traditionally it's been more relating to finance and business control, I see the role evolving much more towards more general management, as well as more like a deputy MD or a COO, because you have to get things done and you're on the ground, and you see the effect end to end because you make the business plans, but you also then work on issues with price management, businesses intelligence, different models in play, sort of thing. So there's very much more scope to move out of the traditional finance role and move into much more this integrator role. On the automotive side, we've actually sort of developing a lot of new business models where you've probably heard of equipment as a service, where traditionally we would sell a truck to a customer, and then the customer then does logistics for the actual end customer. But what we're doing now with a lot of our businesses is we're looking at models where we actually um, continue to own the trucks and charge the customer pay per use. So it could be sort of dollars per ton if it's in the mining sector, or if it's to transport, then it's load per per dollar. So it's very much it's a new space for all of us. Volvo construction equipment is ahead of the game here, but I think we're starting a lot of this work on the truck side as well, which I think is going to be a great revolution for us in the industry, because we're then actually going to be owning the asset. It's almost, I draw the parallel to an Uberization of payload, because our customers then won't have to own the trucks. They can pay per use, and we have the similar model on the captive financing side, where we can even do seasonal financing, which will be great for our customers. The next one's around capital allocation. And of course, as we move into electric vehicles and the new generation of vehicles, autonomous solutions and the like, um, I guess the big challenge for the industry itself is how do you, continue to invest in diesel combustion engines, but and still have money set aside for allocating for this new stuff. So we've actually partnered now with a competitor, with Daimler, to do some fuel cell uh, sort of research. And I guess that's going to be here to stay, where we've got to share R&D, even with the likes, of course, regulation permitting, even with the likes of competitors. And I think the big focus from a finance perspective definitely is capital allocation, because how do you conserve resources for both sides of the spectrum, your traditional business as well as the new businesses that you're getting into. There's also a huge emphasis on digitalization and automation. And of course, that's only going to increase in the future with a huge emphasis on efficiency, as well as applying lean principles. We have something called the Volvo production system that we're now implementing even on the finance side. And of course, then driving change and sustainability. So I think that was pretty much what I wanted to share with you. I don't know, time-wise, does that work? Or?
Right. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you, ma'am. That's a huge landscape that you've covered in a short span of time, that is about 25 minutes or so. Your journey of various roles, multicultural, multiple roles that you have played is a very big inspiration for all the members who are present and listening to you. Thank you very much for sharing your account and also your perspective on the evolving role of CFO in terms of the emerging roles, in terms of the application of oneself towards driving change in the company, either championing digitalization, automation, or fostering values and sustainability across all the fronts. I think the CFO's role is quite evolving, and your account of how you have navigated these roles. On one hand, you are an epitome of having a long stint, yet it's a dynamic stint that you had across, not just across Volvo, or even before that. So that's a huge inspiration for those who are planning their careers. And generally, the belief and inference is that you get stuck up and stagnant if you are working in an organization for a longer time. But here is an example through your journey that we have understood how one can be agile, how one can ask for newer roles and excel in all those roles and keep moving. So by that, it's been a dynamic stint that you have had for quite some time, even in Volvo. Thank you very much for sharing these perspectives. I will conserve time and I will thank you for this wonderful opening remarks that you have given. We will now start the Q&A. I request Professor Prasad to come in. These questions have been collected at the time of registration, and the questions have been landscaped, curated, and divided into two clusters. The first cluster will be taken up by Professor Prasad, and I'll come back for the second cluster. Over to you, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Professor Rao. That was a very interesting landscape, and I think all the more important because you've taken a very big industry. You come from a very big industry. Logistics is very important to India. So I think there'll be a lot of ideas will come from that. And then finance is a function for which this institution was started in the beginning. So finance is an area where you're representing. And lastly, I think you also have experience in technology and transformation, which is also something is extremely current and what this industry is going through in a very significant way. The first question is a personal one. Given the background, what are the critical career decisions you needed to make in your journey? And what was your decision-making framework there?
The interesting thing with the career journey I've had is that, I mean, I've actually enjoyed moving to different countries, but when I started off in India, I moved quite a lot. Every 2 years I moved around. So I think change is definitely there in my DNA. And I think so when I moved and translated that to the UK first, my plan was not actually to move overseas. I wanted to come back and work with KPMG in India. Just one thing led to the other sort of thing. But I think once I started that journey, I wanted to have a taste of not just studying overseas, but also working overseas. And I think the independence that it fosters, that really sort of sparked my attention or my attraction to remain there. And I think part of the decision making, to answer your question on the career decisions, I think it's very much to put yourself forward for a role, irrespective of whether you have sufficient experience for it or not. But I think just to say that you have the interest for it and make yourself known. And I guess networking was very much a part of that. But to apply for roles that were probably over and beyond your station at the time. But that's mainly to tell the organization that you're actually looking, and also to be flexible when it comes to moving around, because I think not everybody wants to uproot and go to a new country every 4 years. But I think my learning there was very much, I didn't bother about the country so much. It was more the role itself. So, for instance, in South Africa, I think, I knew security is going to be an issue. in South Africa, and I did have some challenges there. But the idea was it was Southern Africa. We were looking after all the countries around, South Africa as well, and so I sort of that actually helped me select the country itself. It was more the role and the fact that I haven't had experience in, the continent of Africa before. And it's the same with Turkey. It's a good blend of the East and West. So, business is done in, more like an emerging market fashion, but it's close to Europe. So I think those definitely helped to put yourself out there.
Excellent, ma'am. You've covered the change aspect. You've covered the independence aspect. You have also covered the stretching beyond what one already is comfortable with. They're all excellent points for those looking at careers. We move to the next question, ma'am. What are the challenges faced by a CFO like you in the automotive industry, and what skill sets are essential? If there are some use cases that you can put in, it will be useful.
I think in terms of it's a blend of, I would say, both business control. So, your acumen when it comes to, profitability analysis or, understanding the levers of the business. So that's one side of it. And so business control is definitely a big facet. And the other side is, risk control, governance, compliance. So, and it's sort of they pull you in two different directions. But I think integrity and trust is definitely been, the foundation for me in doing these roles, because, you are the gatekeeper, and often you're not going to be popular because, you're sort of asking people to comply, whether it comes to revenue recognition or, profitability or, so you're not always popular, but you stand your ground because, you live by your conviction of what's right for the company.
Fantastic, ma'am. The third query is with respect to electric vehicles. Is there any roadmap that you have? I mean, in the car segment in Australia, there is a goal of 50% electric, 100% by the end of the decade. Is there anything that you have equivalent? And if so, what does it mean in specific for you as a CFO?
So I think, we have equally ambitious targets because we're also part of the, the goals from the, the UN SDLG sort of thing. So we have, I think we said 1/3 of our trucks should be electric by 2035, and that's globally. And it's quite interesting because Australia for a long time was very much behind, with the previous government, we were very much behind on the journey for climate change and things like that. And now we've got a new Labour government that's been appointed in May, I think after 9 years or so. And they're very much coming into this sort of into the electric motor vehicle space. There are things to be ironed out between the federal and the state governments, of course, but notwithstanding, I think after the US, Australia, we have the highest number of electric vehicle orders within the Volvo system. I think so that, I mean, so we've actually leapfrogged quite a lot, and we're going to start selling. So initially we started, selling only the sort of medium duty FL and FM trucks, but I think from next year we're also going to produce and sell the heavy duty electric range. Of course, initially we'll get it from Sweden, and eventually we have a factory here in Australia. Eventually we would like to build them here as well. But coming back to your question on the role of the CFO there, it's a totally different sort of business model when it comes to electric, because we're now talking, we have a group company called Volvo Energy that's dealing with not just batteries, but also batteries including circularity, but also very much into charging infrastructure. And that's, a new piece for all of us So also in finance, because we're working on various different business models when it comes to the retail strategy plan for how our dealerships would look like in the future as well, because today 2/3 of our dealership work that happens in workshops that we own or are private, 2/3 of them deal with the engines. So tomorrow, how will that space look like? So we're very much working on that at the moment.
Great, ma'am. I think the next question is on the technology software side. And usually you have this make or buy kind of a decision.
Mhm.
And so you mentioned that there's a movement to in-house software. And
Mhm.
what is the current arrangement and what are the implications of, in case there is a shift to in-house fully? I mean, what is the journey and what are the implications there?
Yeah. So we have our own IT teams, business systems teams that work on some of the systems that we use. But on the infrastructure side, we've actually outsourced it to HCL in India. So they support us all over the globe. And so that's on the infrastructure side. But on the actual business system side, we have our own teams. But a lot of them are software that we have bought and customized for Volvo use.
And what when you want to look at things like IoT and maintenance related, so would it be in-house or would it?
It's I would say a combination. There is some that is in-house and some that are outsourced. But I guess it depends on because we have a lot of connected solutions when it comes to the vehicle itself. Those are definitely in-house, because that's very much where we can do some preventative maintenance. We have a lot of telematics on the trucks today, that and all that is definitely in-house and not outsourced.
Okay, ma'am. I think there are many more questions, but I'll take one before I move, hand it back to Professor Rao. And this is about finance as a career. A lot of aspirants at the workplace and at campus. So you've had a journey. What are your suggestions to them?
I think I very much, I mean, of course, I've come in from, a finance background, but I definitely feel even on the MBA, I thought, coming in from a finance background really helps, because at the end of the day, even if you're going into an MD or a president role, uh, I guess you can come in from different aspects. You can come in through sales, you can come in through finance. But I think, if your aspiration is to move from just, move on beyond being a CFO to being an MD, I've quite enjoyed the fact that, and that's what I'm aspiring for for myself. But what uh, I quite like is the fact that, knowledge of finance backed with, business acumen, it really helps, because end of the day, if you own a P&L, you definitely need to know some elements of finance. So I think even as an MD in the future, it's quite a strong sort of home base, if you like, uh, moving from a finance role into an MD position, because you learn other aspects, of course, but the ground reality of understanding your P&L and balance sheet is, you can't take that away from somebody who has that finance knowledge. So I think it's quite a I think it really helps for the
I
next
think
step.
you have, yeah, you have, not only emphasized the finance angle, you've stretched it beyond and taken it to the MD level, and even for an entrepreneur or a startup kind of a similar kind of a thing. And I think that's very aspirational for those who are coming with such a background. Thank you very much, ma'am. We come to the end of this cluster for the time being, and I hand it back to Professor.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. This is very, very interesting. We are always constrained for time, and let me do a very good job today. We have 15 minutes on hand, ma'am, and lot many questions. What I do is I give first preference to those members who raise hands, and I immediately add them to ask a question directly with you. While they are getting ready, I will take just one or two questions. The first one is that there's a curious participant probably who is trying to understand, has Volvo been nominated for the Nobel Prize for Peace for gifting its life-saving invention, the 3-point seat belt to the world?
It's an interesting question, but we haven't been, as far as I know, we haven't been nominated, though we come from the same land of the Nobel Prizes.
Wonderful. Yes. A more a deeper level question is, how do you think will the AI-based applications change the roles of CXOs in the coming days?
That's an interesting question. I just attended actually a session with Deloitte a few weeks ago, where they were talking about how AI is going to change, the landscape, even of governments and, of course, private industry as well. And I think in Australia, where we are today, we have to leapfrog very much more. And we had this discussion. It was an Indian guy actually who was giving us this speech. And I think where I see it moving is, I mean, we will be forced to use a lot of AI, and we're doing it already in some of our, we have a technology group called Group Truck Technology. They're using AI a lot already, but I definitely see we would have much more application for it, even in our day-to-day, on the commercial side as well. We've started testing a lot of things, but I think we're far away from where we should be. And the discussion we had actually with this Deloitte partner was that, sometimes it helps when you come in from a position of, when you're not where you should be, you can probably leapfrog a couple of layers before, to get ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. I think AI is something that we will not be able to escape from. It's already being implemented. Several subgroups within Volvo and also in various organizations, it has been at an advanced level of application. And yes, as you mentioned in your own words, we are compelled to leapfrog a couple of layers because of the advent of AI and because of the advent of emerging technologies that are being applied. And our roles as CXOs will definitely undergo change in accordance with the new technologies that we are adopting. Thank you, ma'am. The members who would like to ask questions can raise their hands. Meanwhile, I'll take the next question. There is one question already posted. What kind of upskills are required to reach to the level of CFO? That's the question which is already there in the chat box. I'll read it up for you, ma'am. What kind of upskilling is required to reach the level of CFO, the journey from level down to level of CXO, given the different laws of land? Yeah, this is very interesting, given the fact that you have had the experience of working in UK to South Africa to Turkey to Australia. So I think that's a valid question. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing is, of course, like I said before, understanding the levers of the business, and that's just at a grassroots level. But beyond that, it's very much more how do you sort of articulate? Because I think on the CFO side, I find a lot of finance people, I guess it's because of the nature of our normal bread and butter function, we tend to be a little inhibited or behind the screen or behind the scenes. And I think the upskilling, I definitely feel to get to the CFO level is very much more, be a bit more articulate and sort of communicate, improve on communication. And I think it's also this, having that business mindset, but a holistic sort of approach, not just from the finance angle, but to be able to see things from different angles, kind of sets you apart, I think. So I would say communication and articulation to improve on, from the hardcore finance function.
From the current level to CFO, one needs to upskill on communication and articulation on one hand. On the other hand, possess what is required to have is a mindset of business, not just one functional mindset. I think the holistic approach will definitely help. I think in the earlier part of your discussion also, ma'am, you have mentioned that across the value chain, if people possess what is called end-to-end mindset, it will definitely help. And you have also crystallized the same point here in your response to the kind of upskilling that's required to level up. Wonderful, man. Thank you so much. I will now request Pawan Teja to ask his question. Over to you, Pawan.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Ji,
My name is Pawan Teja. Ma'am, I came from the agriculture engineering. At present, I am studying MBA at IBS Dehradun. I want to know how to improve my financial skills and what the skills needed to become a CFO for a company. But I don't know. Came from a engineering background.
I guess what you have on your MBA curriculum will probably be there would be some finance modules, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Finance and economics modules, yeah.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I think, I mean, the fact that you come from an engineering background itself helps, because there's always this rational questioning of why when you come from engineering. I guess so you're already in that sort of frame of mind, and then to back it with some conceptual finance modules probably would help.
So the suggestion to you, Pawan, is to pick up a few courses, finance modules, with laying emphasis on, because every business school, including ours, would have these modules, and suggested modules you can take online as well, and delve deeper into getting closer towards the desired role of CFO. I think your ground can be laid accordingly while you're still in the school. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for clarifying that to Pawan. I'll take another question. That is, this is a bit top level kind of question. Quality of board of directors is crucial for the functioning of CFO in managing key indicators. What is your comment on this?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I had the opportunity to be on both sides actually. On the Volvo side, I was on some boards of different companies when I worked at the headquarters, and also, of course, in Australia and in South Africa. But there, it's very much more. You're sort of following your, what's expected from shareholders and what's expected from, you have a standard sort of set of things or KPIs and things that you're reporting every quarter. But I think it was interesting when I was on the other side as a non-executive independent director in Reddington. I quite appreciated it from the other side of the spectrum, where we were actually putting demands on the management itself. So I think I quite enjoyed being on both sides, I would say. And I was also on the audit committee. So I think coming from a risk and control and compliance sort of background, I quite I actually enjoyed being on the other side, and also looking into corporate governance, because that's very much key, as you know, in all the issues that we've had in the corporate world, not just in India but overseas as well. So I think there's been very much more demands from a corporate governance point of view on what you can and can't do as management. So I think that opened my eyes to a lot more when it came to being on the board of Reddington.
Probably it will help the participant to understand a little better if you can give an example of where it has been very demanding to you on a given situation, and on the other, as being an independent director, you had probably asked one of the tougher questions. So two sides of the table, probably you can give an example each, and then it will help us understand better.
Sure. I think on this side where you're on the board and you get demands from the chairman and other people, it's been I guess because we're not talking about listed. We're talking about individual companies. It would be different with the AB Volvo board, I'm sure. It's been tough in the sense they're always stretching you to do more, and sometimes you've got to sensitize them to the realities. because I guess that's the domain of a board, that it push you to do more and achieve more and all this kind of thing. So it's been, I guess, certain times you've had to stand your ground to say that certain thing, yes, you will accept challenges, but there have been times when you've had to come back to the board and say, eh, this can't, the pace of growth can't go beyond what you're being stretched for. And I think it's been fairly okay because they've been, the board members are also in-house Volvo people. I think on the other side, the big learning for me on the Reddington side was very much how independent is an independent director. So you can come with the best ideas, but you know, as an independent director, but how much would that be implemented is very much a function of how willing the management is. So I think that was my biggest challenge, because I'm always asking this question from a governance point of view. Independent is an independent director, because you're
Yes.
not, you can say something, but you know, how do you enforce it?
How independent is the independent director? Yes, that question shall remain. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for that detailed response that you have attempted. We have now completed 1 hour. I'll request Professor Prasad if he has any point to make quickly, and then we'll wrap it up with a brief summary. I'll come back for summary.
I have one question, ma'am. This is
Yeah.
with respect to Make in India. So logistics is a huge opportunity. At the same time, automobiles is also one sector where something is happening. Maybe it's not on the scale as some of the other countries, but something is happening. What are your suggestions to potential entrepreneurs and to policymakers here?
For the Make in India, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think, there's definitely, like you say, a huge potential too, and we're doing that ourselves. We, have outsourced, or we've actually uh, are doing a lot of our engine manufacturing in Pithampur, in a plant that we share with, we have a JV with Aisha. And I see more and more things moving to India. So we've just opened the biggest sort of R&D center after Sweden in Bangalore. We've just done that about a month ago, and I see definitely a potential, and it's ramping up. And a lot of the technology innovation space is moving to India, which is great. I think on the is actual manufacturer side, yes, we've made inroads, but not to the volumes that we hoped to have. And I think there we have some element of sort of coming together, I guess, looking at policy of the governments as well, because where we've done well is in mining, but there's a huge potential when it comes to demanding long haul, and we're not there yet in terms of as Volvo as a company sort of thing. So our volumes are pretty low, and I'm always actually challenging, why can't we produce in India for some of these markets around, uh, you know, even challenging why we actually produce here, because a lot of our customers definitely like the fact that we build in Australia for the Australian market, unlike other competitors. But there definitely is a potential that we could produce in countries like India. So there's definitely untapped potential, like you say. What we need to do to make that happen, I think, is more investor friendly policies, because I think the issue we've always had with India in the past is that things keep changing, and it's not very easy to make business decisions with a long term outlook if things keep changing. So that stability of policy, I think, would help,
Fantastic,
and
ma'am.
it's improving definitely, for sure.
So I think both on the potential side as well as on the policy side, you've made some suggestions, and I hope we'll be able to move in that particular direction. Thank you very much. Back to Professor Rao.
Thank you, ma'am. One last question that we have, and then we'll close it after that. What is your commentary on, you've had a long stint in manufacturing industry itself, the role of university in training the students as per industry requirements, and the willingness of industry actually to collaborate with universities, and how do we bridge this gap between the curriculum to corporate? So what are your comments on this particular aspect? This is a very, very important aspect for us. So we thought when a leader is available with us, we'll try and understand a few perspectives from them. So the question.
Yeah, sure. So we had, we have some partnerships with universities, both in Sweden. I know for a fact in the UK we had, partnership with a technical college. And I think what we're talking about here in Australia is the same, that we need to foster much more connection with, especially because that landscape is changing. If we looked at technician, uh, a couple of years ago, that whole role is changing. I mean, we need more auto electricians as technicians now because the products are changing. And there, what we're talking about is if we need to, partner with universities, that has to be done quite early on in, so maybe even follow the right pick of employees right from maybe high school through to vocational colleges, and then take them through to the next stage. So it's looking at how we can tap into the universities and work in partnership together with them, because we're doing a similar piece with the government now here when it comes to either electric vehicles or charging infrastructure, because we're all right at the beginning of that frontier, and we're saying let's pool in our resources to work with think tanks, work with the policy makers, so that we can be efficient when it comes to the output. And a part of that piece is definitely universities as well when it comes to engineering.
Great, great, ma'am. Thank you very much. I think this gives us a lot of hope and promise that partnerships, and especially as you mentioned, engaging with education institutions early on, so that you have a longer engagement with the students from high school to vocational programs to degree engineering, so on and so forth. I think those partnerships will pay off very well. So thanks a lot, ma'am, for that response. I would like to, on behalf of everyone who is present here, extend my gratitude to you for this superb conversation that you have facilitated. We have been able to understand and relate to much of what you have said. A large number of people who are around the screen today, I'm sure, have also enjoyed, because you are a professional leader who has things that are more relevant to talk about and that are directly applicable to most of us, and is also aspirational for many of us around the screen today. So thank you so much for that. Some of the bullet points that I have jotted down, there are many, but just for a quick summary, and then we can wrap it up. It is really interesting to build your careers with long stint, and like the way you have managed to. It is a long yet dynamic kind of stint. Consistency is the hallmark of a leader. You have been quite result focused, and that is something that we have to learn from. And also the methods and modalities of adaptability and agility when you're working in a multicultural, multi-country, diverse roles like the one that you have had. We're quite impressed with your own working in UK to South Africa to Turkey, Australia, so on and so forth. So that's quite a diverse territory, especially for you to work. And you have built your career so methodically. Some of the points that you have highlighted is that if you're not a networker, you will remain as a mere worker. So that's a very, very important point. You need to put yourself forward and apply for various emerging roles in the organization, much beyond your current role. I think one needs to articulate, one needs to ask for and apply these roles. Second, execution is as important as strategy. That's a very, very important aspect to bear in mind. Third, cross-functional collaboration. In today's world, we cannot afford to work in silos. We need to display that we can very smoothly collaborate across functional areas, and that ability will actually give you greater opportunities to lead and grow up in your ladder. End-to-end mindset, which we talked about some time back, end-to-end mindset across value chain will be an added advantage. root cause analysis, because you are a problem solver. So we need to get deep into understanding the causes and analyze them and then work for solving the problems. The roles that you have identified, the roles that are evolving, they are on the challenges of technology, they are on the challenges of sustainability, they are on challenges of climate control and climate crisis, and therefore the impact of all these factors on our businesses. And we need to work for the new and evolving models. One that you have particularly mentioned is EAS, Equipment as a Service. Another important thing that remained in our discussion is that change is in my DNA. How many people can very boldly say that, like you have said? So we need to have change ingrained into our thinking. It should be part of our DNA. Only then we are adaptable and we will put ourselves forward for the roles that are emerging. People say that they are flexible, but saying that change is in my DNA is a more impactful way of saying. Thank you very much for that. The roles are also changing because of advent of technology, and sometimes we are compelled to move faster, especially when artificial intelligence applications and applications of various other emerging technologies are knocking at our door. We need to upskill ourselves. We need to have a business mindset, holistic mindset, articulate better and communicate better to grow. The roles of CFO are challenging enough on one hand, and if you're an independent director, the roles are also very, very interesting, but there are limitations on both sides. With your own experience, you mentioned how one has navigated sitting on both sides of the table, how one can muster courage and try and tell the board that we are stretching too far. The pace of growth is something which is untenable on one hand. On the other hand, give suggestions with a lot of responsibility when you are an independent director. That also we have heard from you. Well, what remains was how independent is the independent director and how those suggestions are actually really taken up or not will remain a question. Make in India, according to, has great potential, because when we see the stability in policies, a large part of this will be achieved, and that potential is untapped, and we are moving in that direction. Make in India is going to be a reality with great potential. The other thing that you mentioned is about the role of universities, and role of industry. We need to forge partnerships as, if possible, as early as possible, and try and make sure that the finished products or the students who are emerging from these colleges are dovetailed to the requirements of the industry. Only it's possible with the early engagement to the extent that is required. These are some of the very, very important bullet points that you've shared with us, ma'am. I'm very, very happy having jotted down, having learned, and I have enjoyed conversing with you as much as all of us around the screen have. Thanks for your time once again, and have a good night. We will contact you. I'll write an email to you and share the summary of this conversation. Maybe you can make a few changes if required. Kindly email your presentation to us. It will help us write a summary.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Friends, ladies and gentlemen who are around the screen, thank you for your patient participation. You have raised very, very interesting questions, both at the time of registration as well as during the conversation. Thank you for that. We are going to see you on December 30th at 6:30 p.m. IST. There is no New Year break. We will take a break after 30th of December, and we'll come back in the new year without any break. So see you on the next Friday, 6:30 p.m. Till then, keep reading more about the Volvo Group. And whoever asked that very interesting question of Volvo Group has been nominated for Nobel Peace Prize for that wonderful life-saving invention. Keep reading and keep Googling about that. You'll have a lot of videos also shown on YouTube. Thank you all. See you next Friday. Take care.